Welcome to the Helena Sips podcast, where I, Helena Nicklin, talk to creative humans who've built careers doing what they truly love and discover the rituals that keep them grounded and bring them joy. And this week,
I had to work my arse off not to go to university, but actually having grown up in a very middle-class context, the idea of going to art school rather than university was considered to be so eccentric. And yet I feel very strongly that art, creativity, design, all the stuff I do is actually an incredibly good career. And in fact, in terms of us as a country, in terms of Brand UK, our creative industries are incredibly important.
I speak to Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen. Laurence is an interior designer turned TV icon who's now reclaiming his roots as a fine artist. Classically trained at Camberwell School of Arts and Crafts, he spent years adorning everything from oligarchs' boudoirs to West End theatre ceilings before the cameras showed up. He spent the best part of a decade transforming other people's living rooms on national television, watched by 12 million Brits at its peak, and since then has been a regular feature on all sorts of shows, from being thrown around the jungle on Celebrity Bear Hunt to playing Pictionary live on air. But somewhere between the leather trousers and the velvet curtains, the painter got quietly sidelined by the TV star. Now, in his 61st year, he's picking the brushes back up, touring the country with his third solo show, Drawn to Adorn, and, by his own admission, hitting a technical peak most pensioners don't get to brag about. Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen, welcome to the Helena Sips podcast.
No, lovely to meet you.
So I'm excited to hear all about this latest show, but first let's just get to know you a little bit over a drink. So you're in a virtual bar that serves anything at all that you like. What is it going to be and why?
Well, it's gin. I mean, I don't really drink anything else. But, gin to me is just one of those things that just always reeks of the late Queen Mother. It just is immutable, unchangeable, unflappable, and should be drunk from a vase. I want drinking gin. I want Gordon's. I want Waitrose Own. I want, just gin. And this is what's lovely when you go away somewhere. There's always a just gin. There's always a kind of a Victoria or London, whether you're in Cyprus or Melbourne or Kuala Lumpur. They've always got a gin that they make locally, which is probably made in someone's bathtub.
Yes, well, it used to be, didn't it?
Indeed. So definitely gin. And I'm not really that bothered what you cut it with either. It can be tonic, but it could be water, as far as I'm concerned.
Do you never sip it neat?
I have. And actually, particularly fragrant one, why the hell not? And in fact, sometimes when Jackie and I are travelling, we were on the steamship Sudan going down the Nile. And there's always that big thing about not having the ice. And so we didn't have any ice in it even. It was literally just a glass of gin. We called it an expat because that's what it felt like. It's a bit like carrying up the Khyber. I mean, the other thing that I'm a great believer in is when you start getting a cold, you're getting a cold because you get that funny feeling at the back of your nose. Your sort of soft palate feels inflamed.
I have it right now.
Right. So it's very straightforward. What you've got to do is you've got to make antiseptic, which will kill off the cold virus. There are several ways of doing that. Salt water, beer, mouthwash, gin, yes. Apparently it's an old Cossack technique. They'd drink half a bottle of vodka but made sure they gargled it on the way down.
Makes perfect sense to me. I'm all for that.
Cleansing gin.
Exactly. So that's quite, a simple drink. I was half expecting some kind of cocktail.
No, well, you see, I mean, this is one of the problems about being that fancy bloke off the telly, is there's always an assumption that actually my world needs to be as fancy as possible. So even something like, a gin will end up being served in a kind of a Waterford fishbowl with peppercorns, whereas really it just needs to be gin and possibly a plastic monkey. People are always so disappointed that I'm not more complicated with things like that. I mean, I'm a great believer in wine in that I believe that all wine is fine. In my world, there is no such thing as fine wine because all wine is fine. Yeah, I'm very high maintenance.
Is it the same with food, though?
When I'm away filming, I will more or less eat the same thing every day just because it's easier and because, I've trained room service to deliver it. But I live in an environment stuffed full of foodies. Both my daughters, my wife are incredible cooks and very, very focused on food. I have one son-in-law who's obsessed. But in fact, my 10-year-old grandson's really into it as well. And yes, listen, it's lovely, and I will. And I love a bit of nice food when it's nice. But I don't know, maybe I'm that generation that kind of believes that you're not supposed to like all the food you eat. That, food is there to be eaten. And then if you like it, then fine. But actually, you just get on and eat what you're given. And the eye rolls I get from my daughters and from my grandchildren when I say something like that. But I do sort of believe that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I don't like, but I still eat it. I don't really like egg, but I'll still eat it.
So thinking about the food then, your early years, Kensington to southeast London, what was on the table there? Was it very similar? Was your mother it was just you?
No, she was very, very straightforward. I mean, she was she was part of that generation that had sort of discovered Elizabeth David. Actually, she really liked Robert Carrier. So, dinner parties were a little bit more fancy, but day-to-day food was quite straightforward. She was diagnosed with MS quite severely. So she was quite sort of limited in terms of what she could do. Then my father died. He was in a terrible hurry of leukemia. It's something I think they can sort out a little bit better now. So, I mean, I used to dread being at dinner parties because when people ask me about my parents, it sounds so Dickensian, that my mother was terribly ill and my father was dead. And it was like, I was sort of brought up in a workhouse, which wasn't true at all. It was incredibly straightforward. I mean, but I think it was entirely down to my mother, who's an incredibly strong woman. And she just refused to let it affect our world. We didn't have a car. We didn't really go on holidays in the same way. Well, we didn't go abroad. We used to go and stay with people. But we still lived in, considerable comfort. But she just made her world work for her. And she never went shopping. Everything was delivered. So there you go. She sort of invented Uber all those years ago. I remember the greengrocer delivered, the butcher delivered. Peter Jones in Sloane Square delivered all the bathroom stuff, and then there was a Harrods delivery once a month. And but again, I mean that's sort of what people did. That was suburban middle class living in the 70s. But she was very, she used to push on through. I mean, she was very frail, but food was cooked. And I can't say I remember much of it. So maybe that was it. I mean, maybe because food wasn't a big part of the agenda. It's something that didn't really kind of break through.
But maybe that's why it left room for so much other beauty in your life.
Yeah, well, there we go. That's a lovely way of putting it.
Isn't it?
Again, a little bit over fancy, but yeah.
But was there a moment then around that sort of time? I mean, I've heard talk about a certain teacher, I think at Allain's it was, that really helped spark the creative that you are today.
Well, no, I mean, Allain's was great, actually. I mean, because I was down to go to Dulwich College. I had places at various schools. And, it was quite a turbulent time. I was 9 when my father died, and by that stage my mother wasn't very well. And moving on to a big school. And of course, what's hilarious was that back then, big schools, boarding schools, public schools, the only precedent you had was kind of the Sunday evening adaptation of Oliver Twist.
Yeah.
So it was all about kind of institutionalised bullying and canes and all sorts of stuff. These days, big schools, boarding schools, posh schools are all based on Hogwarts. So they can't wait to have these kind of pumpkin feasts. So I was a little bit, I think it's about the only time in my existence so far where I was less than kind of outgoing and less than a bullion. And I just didn't like the idea of Dulwich College at all. Whereas Allain's struck me as being much more cuddly, which it was. And yeah, I mean, there were a couple of art teachers who were very energetic. James Brew was a tremendously out there character, very extravagant. And there was a guy called Martin Blake, who weirdly I bumped into in a motorway service station relatively recently. Because, there we are. But the weird thing about school was that I wasn't really aware of it, but no one ever really encouraged me to be arty because I was academically doing quite well. And I can remember sort of various housemasters and stuff like that being very poo-pooey about the fact that I was starting to do textiles and stuff. But you could be doing another more complicated form of ancient Greek. Just like, don't really want to, mate, thanks. And so I never really took art that serious. I used to win quite a lot of competitions. But again, I never really, thought much about that. I'd always assumed I was going to be a barrister. I thought, and it was only like halfway through my A-levels where I was just like, oh my God, I can't be bothered. I mean, really, 6 years doing law? Are you sure? And the only thing I kind of had to fall back on was the idea of going to art school. My mother was unbelievably supportive, which surprised a lot of people. But at the time, Allain's were very nonplussed. They felt it was a very odd thing to be going into art rather than going into law. And in fact, relatively recently, I was made a Doctor of Design.
Congratulations.
There you go, by Gloucester University, I know.
Yeah.
I am that guy now. When I'm on a plane and they say he's a doctor, I say, I'm a doctor. Remove that man's tie. Look, it's a lot better. He's wearing a puff sack, but he looks a lot better. But yeah, there was this big sort of like, induction thing, huge thing going on where I was dressed in Elizabethan clothes. Who knew I can't get that look to work for me? I just look like the Burger King.
Oh.
One period in history, I just wasn't really born to wear. But we had all these speeches, and the Lord High Poo Bar of wherever it was started giving, thousands of art students, giving this obviously quite well-travelled, much-repeated speech about how hard he'd had to work to get to university, coming from a bluff northern mining town, eating gravel, all this kind of stuff. And then he handed over to me and he said, listen, I'm awfully sorry, but I'm going to have to say, I had to work my arse off not to go to university. That actually, having grown up in a very middle-class context, the idea of going to art school rather than university was considered to be so eccentric. And yet I feel very strongly that art, creativity, design, all the stuff I do, is actually an incredibly good career. And in fact, in terms of us as a country, in terms of Brand UK, our creative industries are incredibly important to our export economy, but also unbelievably highly regarded. We're not always, the front runners. We're not always the ones with the couture house named after us. But you go anywhere in the world, and whether it's in fashion or film or architecture, design of any description, even art, you'll find that, most of the people in that office will be Brit or at least Brit trained. We do that very, very well, but we keep it terribly quiet. We're such a visually illiterate nation. We're all about the literature. We're all about being literary. I think it's so amusing that we'll put engineers on banknotes, but the idea of putting William Morris on a banknote is, oh my God, why would we do that? He made wallpaper. But actually, quietly, our creative industries, and you think about our brands, Vivienne Westwood, Alexander McQueen, Paul Smith. These are international celebrations of the quirky eccentricity and creativity of Britain. Mm. So I was very happy to say to all of these art students, you've made the right decision. Don't go to university. Don't be another guy with a degree in IT. Actually, what you're doing is more likely to shoe you into a job. I was talking to Jackie's brother. He's got 3 daughters. 2 are incredibly high-flying astrophysics or whatever. Last one's done history of art. And I said, well, at least one's going to get a job then. Because history of art is one of the most sought-after degrees ever. You can do anything with it. You can go anywhere. You can go into an auction house. You can go into a museum. Or you can end up being the future Queen of England. So, duh.
Yeah. That's it. I'm so happy to hear you say this, and I really hope that the message gets out to kids when they're a bit younger as well, just because my story is I always wanted to be an actress, I always wanted to be on the stage, but I was told I could do everything as long as I had a proper degree first.
Well, this is weird, and I think it's so weird because if you're going to get what you're going to get to work for you, then you've actually got to commit to it. When I became accidentally and inadvertently and rather inconveniently famous, there was that whole thing about, make hay while the sun shines because it's not going to last forever. And I was going, surely that just guarantees your own obsolescence. If you work hard at it, if you do it creatively, if you become different with it, surely it's more likely to carry on, should you want it to carry on. I completely agree. It is a very Brit thing. We are very bad at respecting creativity, particularly visual creativity. We love Shakespeare, we love Vaughan Williams, we love Paxton, we love Brunel. But, the idea of wallpaper... Actually, I think we probably love fashion more. We're very quick to ennoble our fashion designers. But artists, interior designers, less so. That makes me sound bitter. I'm not.
It's fine. It didn't come across like that. But just, I'd really like to know, where did you get this confidence from, do you think, just to be so unashamedly bold and you?
I don't know. Again, okay, we're diving deep here. I think probably it has a lot to do with how insecure that big period of my childhood was, where everything was so compromised by my mother's illness and by my father's death. And I remember my mother she's very sage about always saying, never judge your world against somebody else's. And actually, that's such an incredibly clever thing for her, because, you know, if I'd done that, then, you know, most of my friends were a lot richer than we were, and they were going on, you know, very exotic holidays all over the world and stuff like that. We weren't. We didn't have a car, as I say. We lived in a, you know, very comfortable but very ordinary house. And actually, she really instilled in me this idea that it's not up to other people to define who you are. You define who you are. And I think that must have been like nascent in me anyway. There must have been a kind of a vestigial element of that anyway. But I've never really escaped that. I've never really worried about what people think. It's terribly sweet when people come up to me in the street and tell me how much they love me and stuff like that. But it's like, okay, fine. What good taste you've got. And by the same token, when people want to tell me off about something, it's just like, well, fine, okay. That's called an opinion. Marvellous. Moving on. It's just, it's not there for other people. It's there kind of for me. And I think the funny thing is that's actually quite a hardwired bit in what I do, in my brand, in who I am. And I think that there's a bit of that people enjoy. I mean, I think it gets up so many people's noses, it's not true. But I think for a lot of people, they enjoy spending time with someone on the television that's not constantly worried about what they look like, how they're coming across, what people are saying about them, what people are doing. That's not constantly fiddling with themselves. It's not constantly trying to be your friend. I remember very early on in the whole changing rooms thing, we were doing a shoot, and one of the other presenters, who will remain nameless, Carol Smiley, rang me up and said, "Oh, mate, you've got a problem." And I was going, "Why?" So, well, you know, the photographer's just come to me, and he was photographing you, and he said that he absolutely can't bear you on television, but thinks you're a really nice guy in real life. And I was going, and how is that a problem? Is that not the right way round? I mean, you know, should you not be despised in public, but actually liked when people meet you for real? Or are you saying, Smiley, that actually it's incredibly important to be liked by television, but be a complete dingus when people bump into you in the street?
So what do people tell you off for when they're in the street? I'm intrigued.
Oh, I mean, stuff going back for years. I love it. I mean, it's you know, there's a sort of contact thing. You know, being famous means that people know who you are. So you're right into the midst of a conversation. There's no how to do, who are you? They know who you are, so it's sort of straight into, oh, I've never liked your stuff. I've never liked what you do. I've always thought it's just far too fancy. It's just like, well, okay, fine, good, okay. You're not a fancy kind of person.
Why do they feel the need to say that? I don't know.
Because they're British. Yeah. And again, there's a real Brit thing about, you know, bumping into a famous guy. I feel very sorry sometimes. I mean, you know, I'll be, happens a lot with middle-aged ladies, I have to say as well. I'll be halfway through a conversation, they're right, you know, and that room you did, that room with all the red and the tart's boudoir and the stuff and whatever, and then suddenly you can see their eyes, you can see the scales falling from their eyes, they go, oh my God, I'm being really rude.
Yeah, right.
So, you know, I do my best to try and reassure them. It's just, no, you're right, you're right.
Have they ever thought you were someone else, like Dave Grohl maybe? I'm sure you've had that before.
I think it happens the other way around. I feel sorry for Dave Grohl. You know, he'll be walking down the street and someone goes up to him and said, well, you know, what about carpet? You know, should it be carpet or hard floor? You know, they'll be showing him sort of like wallpaper stuff. He's a simple guy. You know, he's a drummer. What's he going to know? No, the funny thing is that I look like so many people. I am one of those people that looks like a lot of people, and it's not just Dave Grohl. And in fact, Dave Grohl and I look like each other when we were young. It's also people like Jay Rayner. It's people like Matt Berry. I mean, there is sort of, I suppose there's something kind of timeless about the dark bloke with the hair and the beard. But nonetheless, I was at the Cannes Television Festival. I was doing the kind of promotional tour for a show called Laurence in Suburbia I did with Amazon a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. I was so bored. Oh my God, I was so bored. Anyway, trying to be like motivated about it, but by the end of it, and I think I was on the last one, you know, we were in this bar, you know, this hotel room in Cannes, I was looking out to sea, and the journalist said, so what's next? And I just had to lie. I said, celebrity pirate ship. And they went, what? So celebrity pirate ship, it's going to be amazing. Pirate ship, I'm the captain, obvs. And the crew is entirely made up of people that look like me. So we're an entire crew of Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen lookalikes. So that's, Dave Grohl, Jay Rayner, went through this whole list of people. Johnny Depp, possibly, if we can get him. And by the end of it, this guy thought that it was like an absolutely done deal. And they say, what happens is, well, we're in a pirate ship and we just sail around and take over other people's boats. And, God, this is amazing. Needless to say, that's not actually, in fact, been produced yet, because why would you?
Well, to be fair, I'd watch that all day, every day.
I don't know. I think television is such a weird place at the moment. It might just work. Who knows?
It might. Oh, my goodness me. So, so 3 decades in television, really.
Yeah.
You started, obviously, as a classically trained...
Well, I came to it really late. I mean, this is the other thing, is that I didn't start doing television until I was 31, 2, something like that. I'd had several different incarnations, Doctor Who-ish incarnations before that anyway, and I was actually running a really, really quite successful design business. So hence the fact I was always a bit grumpy about television. The first time I ever did a screen test was for changing rooms. And it was literally the next day the BBC producer rang up and said, you were awful, you were haughty, you didn't listen to people, your name's ridiculous, your clothes are stupid, you're perfect, can you start on Monday?
Oh, wow.
So I mean, I've always known that I'm not booked as the kind of guy next door. But I like that. I mean, who is the guy next door anyway? There are no such things as the guy next door. If you see a guy next door on television... So I was doing something down in Titchmarsh several years ago, actually. It might have been in Chelsea or something, and he was doing that thing he does where he gets all sort of wistful, and he was going, I love it when I'm sitting on top of a bus looking down on people's front cars. I went, Alan Titchmarsh, when was the last time you were on top of a bus? You're in the back of a chauffeur-driven Bentley the whole time, for goodness sake. Restart that sentence with, I love looking at people's front gardens from the back of my chauffeur-driven Bentley. And we'll all believe, but why do you need to be on top of a bus?
It's a very good impression.
Oh, really? You think? No, I don't think I can. It's something that comes and goes. Yeah.
But you are finally picking up your brush again with this show, aren't you?
Well, still not entirely sure why. I'm blaming gin. I'm also, so Hermione, my youngest daughter, has taken over this business. So I'm less forced to go to meetings about sofas. But yeah, I really wanted to do something. I just suddenly really felt that I wanted to enjoy it. And I've been painting for a couple of years. And I've had a couple of exhibitions, and they've been very kind of big, significant paintings. But I just, with Drawn to Adorn, I thought, I just want to do nice stuff. I just want to do elegant paintings, pictures that people are going to really enjoy, that aren't there to Damien Hirst you, that aren't there to sort of move you, but just like, ooh, that's nice. It's a brightly coloured bird in a pleasure garden wearing an outlandish Ottoman turban. And so I started doing some sketches around this. In fact, I started doing a series of illustrations for The Tempest. And one of the shows, so Drawn to Adorn is a travelling exhibition. So it's incredibly rock and roll, darling. We start in Brighton on the 27th of June at the Soho Gallery in Brighton, then go into Cotswold Contemporary Marlow, and then Soho Stratford, and then back on the road again in September. And the idea is to do a series of curated shows that have a kind of a different direction to them. And inevitably, of course, Stratford-upon-Avon, which is the 11th of July, starts on the 11th of July. There's a lot of Shakespeare going on there. So they're more gritty. They're very much inspired, actually, by my kind of real upbringing in that kind of post-punk, white heat British cinema, things like Derek Jarman's Tempest, Peter Greenaway. It's funny, actually, because it turns out that I've got very friendly with Toya Wilcox recently. He's another arty, and of course she was the definitive Miranda in the Derek Jarman Tempest thing. But I'm really enjoying the idea of doing pictures that I think people are going to watch like they're a Netflix box set. There's stuff going on in there that is distracting, but it's essentially also very, very decorative. I was doing Prule's chat show. Prule's Chop and Chat from her Cotswold picture. And she's someone I've known for quite a long time, and she's another one that loves to tell me off. And And I have to always say that, look, Prue, love, it's like Anne Robinson. You've got to understand, I find being told off by middle-aged women compellingly erotic. So continue at your peril. Anyway, we were on camera, we were talking about my paintings, and we were surrounded by my paintings, and she was chopping. And she just said, of course, I don't like your paintings. Like, right, okay, great chat show. And I said, okay. And she said, well, the problem is that I just look at all your bushes and trees, and I'm convinced that there's some satyr or something that's going to jump out. I went, Prue, love, that's the whole frickin' point. You know, that the point is that there could be something deadly dangerous or something so ridiculously compellingly sexy. You've got no idea. And then, to be fair, I mean, I looked around at the art she had in her Cotswold mansion, and it was all brightly coloured sheep. So, I mean, she's not going to like my stuff, is she? She's not going to like anything that's a little bit decadent. But yeah, I mean, I've deliberately lent into all of the stuff that I think, you know, made me who I was creatively, you know, 40, 50 years ago. There's Aubrey Beardsley in there. There's, you know, post-punk cinema in there. There's, you know, 17th century botanical illustrations. There's 18th century erotica. There's quite a lot of genitals, I'm not going to lie. I mean, anyone that's kind of slightly genital phobic, beware of the Shakespeare ones in particular.
Excellent.
I think that's one of Prue's problems as well. Maybe a little bit too many willies. But, you know, art is the most fabulously self-indulgent thing you can ever do. You are given like a sick note to be as self-indulgent as possible, to literally just go inside your head and stay inside your head until all of this stuff comes out on the paper. And I love doing this, you know, my day job, my design job, absolutely marvellous. And indeed, I'm sure if you look closely, there's probably some unpleasant things going on in that particular hedgerow in a way that you don't with your mother's William Morris. But everyone's going to buy that now, expecting there to be willies. There might be. Don't forget. Yeah. I've got shoes to put on my grandchildren's feet, and I'm going for Prada. So buy as much as you possibly can. You know, it is one of those sort of 60-year-old things you do. You know, you do have these life laundry moments where you think, what am I going to do? You know, I'm bored of selling sofas. Hermione's doing that very well. It seems I can't actually escape television, which is really irritating. But I can draw. And with these works for Drawn to Adorn, they are predominantly on paper. They're very portable. I can do them in hotels. I can do them on a plane. I can do them on the dining room table. The only problem with that is that there'll be at least 3 grandchildren turning up wanting to have a go too. So apologies, anyone buying my art, if you feel there's a sort of slightly poorly drawn bush, that's probably because a 3-year-old did it, okay? But that's quite nice. They could be more famous in their own right. You know, we could be having like a Mozart moment. I could be like Dad Mozart, and that is, you know, Wolfgang Amadeus, his first ever bush. It's a compelling reason to buy my paintings, obviously.
And that's not part of the genital chat, obviously. A different one.
Indeed, no.
No, so it feels like coming home, in a sense.
Well, it sort of is. I mean, in a very, you know, I keep using the term self-indulgent, but yes, I mean, it is. It's you know, revisiting the warm patch that made me. I mean, I decided not to focus on art after I left art school. I got a job, and then I got into interior design. I mean, I used to paint a lot on changing rooms, more than anything to get myself out of a bind. If I knew the room was looking pants, I'd do an 18th century bucolic painting over the fireplace, knowing that when they opened their eyes, they'd hate the room, but they'd go, "Ooh, we could probably put that on eBay." So, you know, so it's kind of like bribery. But, you know, it gets to the point when you know, you do start thinking about these things, that you just go, well, actually, I really like art. I'm quite good at it. Why am I not doing it more? And I was also very, you know, there's that wonderful quote from Hokusai, the Japanese woodblock engraver who did the wave, you know, the iconic wave. We all know the wave. We all love the wave, even though it's actually not a picture of a wave. It's a picture of Mount Fuji in the background. But the wave, which is tattooed on every surfer's butt wherever you go. And he did that in the 1870s when he was in his early 70s. And he knew he'd done something amazing. He knew he'd done something revolutionary. And he knew that actually it was the beginning of his career. And I love the idea that actually at 62 I might be doing stuff now, which is the best I've ever done. I kind of feel it probably is the best I've ever done. And, you know, I'm going forward with that. We live in a weird world. We live in a weird modernist construct where you are told that actually getting old means you're getting worse, you're rotting, you're falling to pieces. You just need to be, quietly shoved aside and given a Werther's original. Somewhere like Japan, you're not. As an elder, you're incredibly respected. You're expected to be, still full of beans and energy and creativity. Look at David Hockney. Actually, you should keep it going. Of course you should keep it going. And actually you should take some chances. You should be a bit brave. This is a weird thing to be doing. I could be staying at home drinking gin, watching box sets. But no, I'm taking my art on an exhibition road trip where I'm staying in some really quite dodgy hotels because apparently the gallery don't have the budget for the Ritz. And I rather love that. It's great, fine, great. Let's engage with the world.
Do you think it'll go on longer than September? You said you're picking it up again in September.
Well, yeah, I hope so. I hope to be able to report back and say, well, this is what I'm going to do now. I can keep me and Mrs. Llewelyn-Bowen in the not inconsiderable style to which we've come to expect, based on my art rather than just based on advertising campaigns and going to Puerto Rico with Bear Grylls and all of that kind of stuff that one ends up doing as an orange television celebrity. There's a nice kind of reality to it, which I rather love.
Yeah, and I love how you described it as painting meets rock and roll. I was going to ask you what would be in your rider.
Actually, there's nothing in my art rider because they haven't got the budget. So, I'd need to start with, well, I'd like a comfortable bed. Yeah, sorry.
Got a couple of quick fire questions to end with, if that's all right. Okay, first of all, What does Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen smell like?
Amusingly, I smell of room spray. And I have done for a very long time. Florian's in Venice, the cafe in St. Mark's Square, do a series of room sprays, which I fell in love with probably 20 years ago. And there's one which, of course, is called the Room of the Important Man, which is the red one, and it smells of kind of sin. And frankincense. But it's very good at covering the smell of rot that attaches to yourself when you're 60. So basically, I wear Venetian Shake and Vac. There you go.
Perfect. No, that's all good. Favourite book of all time?
I read an immense amount, and I always read non-fiction. But there's only one fiction book I've ever read, The Leopard by Giuseppe de Lampedusa, which was, I think, incredibly successfully done by Netflix last year, set in the 1870s Sicilian nobleman. But that's lovely. Do read it if you haven't. But I think the book that I will always have the greatest affection for is Hall's Dictionary of Subjects and Symbols in Art, textbook.
Oh, good choice.
Thank you.
Favourite film of all time?
Woo. I'm like that old bastard that thinks that they don't make films like they used to. So films like Blade Runner, which was incredible. The Hunger, David Bowie and Catherine Deneuve's Vampires in New York. Oh my God, how sexy is that? Filmmaking, when it was on film and quite complicated, none of it was CGI. It's all models, it's all puppets, it's all that kind of stuff. It's brilliant.
Yes, much more tactile. What album would be the soundtrack to a film about your life?
Well, I don't know, probably Adam and the Ants. I was doing a very grown-up radio thing where it's sort of like the poetry of your life. And it was Radio 4, it was recorded in front of a live audience in the Radio 4 theatre. And they had actors reading my favourite bits of poetry. Real kind of senatorial Shakespearean actor. And I made him read Prince Charming, ridicule is nothing to be scared of.
Excellent.
Fucking hilarious.
Is that your karaoke song too?
No, I can't sing. I sing like a crow. I have no interest in singing. I employ people to sing for me instead.
Oh, gosh, that's amazing. On that note, literally, what was the last utterly ridiculous thing you bought or spent money on?
My ridiculous is such a ridiculously high bar. It's just like the most ordinary thing people would go, what did you just buy? I bought a really complicated, compassy thing, which ended up being really expensive, and but I love it. I still don't quite know how to use it, but it's a bit like being a 17th century alchemist It's a really, really creepy, scary piece of kit.
I was actually going to ask, if you were to be reincarnated as a piece of furniture, what would you be? But I don't know if that would be like a plain wooden chair now.
Yeah. I mean, if I would really, really played my cards right and I was reincarnated as something useful, I'd be a bra. Not like a fancy lacy bra, just like a really, like helpful, quite sturdy bra.
Oh, nursey.
Nursey. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, and finally, how would you sum up your life in a toast?
Oh my God, I think I talk far too much about myself. There's far too much out there about me. I mean, rather than that, let's redact some of it. Let's bring some of it back in. But no, I mean, listen, I am enjoying this art thing, and I think I think people will be amused by it. It's witty, it's decadent, it's elegant, it's witty, and there's genitals. I mean, what's not to love?
That's perfect. And on that note, Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen, it's been absolutely brilliant to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Not at all. And the vision of that William Morris wallpaper with that door will forever live rent-free in my head. Congratulate your mother.
Hello, it's me again, just popping in to explain that last comment. You see, I was recording in my mother's house in front of some crazy-ass William Morris wallpaper with a really freaky doll just sitting there in the corner, but I thought that he would enjoy it, so I kept it in. There you go. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, you can catch up on all the previous episodes over on helenasips.com. Until next time, cheers.